Dave in Ealing, good morning to you.
Hi, morning, Nikki.
What are your thoughts on free speech?
A bit of a variation on what the previous caller said, but the other way around, in that I think it's totally up to universities and university groups who they want to allow onto their campuses or not. And as your previous caller was saying, universities are not unique. Our government in this country has any number of restrictions on free speech. You mentioned gagging orders, banning orders on people coming to this country, not because of something they've done, but because of ideas they represent.
Yes.
Extremist groups are restricted in, they can say, for instance, they can march, but the police will restrict where they can address the public.
And do you agree with that?
Yes. Because I think, on one hand, this conversation seems to be there's an absolute right for anyone to say whatever they want to say, regardless of whatever offence it causes. That right doesn't exist in practice in British law, number one. Number two, we all have a right not to be offended. It's a choice of that particular community. So a community in a university makes a choice not to invite someone. This argument would have to say they don't have a right to do that. They can have a speaker imposed on them, regardless of how maybe the majority of students feel, regardless of the offence it will cause. Maybe a tiny group in the university has the right to impose that on the majority, regardless of what anybody else thinks. That can't be right. Those people, the others have rights too.
I mean,
our legal system does that. It defines things that are legally not acceptable. You can't. So that's one restriction. Beyond that, as the previous caller was saying, there are some grey areas, and where there are those grey areas, for me, it's up to those communities. It's not up to a board of censors that the government appoints to determine what is acceptable and what isn't, and that's what these government proposals are about. It's about having a committee of people who none of us can name today, who were never voted, who will make a decision as to what is acceptable or not for universities, for people who people who are invited to universities. That, to me, does not sound democratic at all. It sounds like something from the Soviet Union. And that's what, that's the bit that's missing in this conversation. No respect to some of the other calls and some of the things I've heard today, the whole debate goes on to, freedom of speech. Everyone's got a right to say. It misses how this is being done. That explanation isn't given, that this will be managed by a committee. It's on appeals, where they will decide what is acceptable or not.
Well, this is why our university's minister is now saying that a number of universities are failing to uphold freedom of speech, and he wants to absolutely stop groups stifling people who don't agree with them. So
he does it himself. So his government issues banning orders. His government restricts certain groups. Now, you or I may think it's right that certain groups are excluded. You and I may think it's right that Nazi groups, blatantly racist groups are restricted. Our government does that on a weekly basis. Joe Johnson's government does that. I've not heard him pipe up during any of those debates and say, Home Secretary, I disagree.
I would imagine
we should let Nazis speak.
That this will be put to him today, won't it? There will be a whole lot of questions he has to answer. Dave, I'm sorry we've run out of time. Thank you so much for picking up the phone this morning. The time is 9:31.